Hi guys. For those of you that don't know, my name's Michael, and I am the woodworker for MK Designs. The sewer is right over there and refuses to get on camera. But anyway, this week we're going to make a lot of sawdust. I'm kidding. But we are going to make sawdust, but that's not what the video is about. The video is actually about, if you remember a couple weeks ago in the wood aging process video, I told you guys that I was going to show you how I built the crates. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to build these two crates, and that's the one from the last video. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing we got to do is obviously mark the board where we want to cross cut it at. I had a really good video on how I did do this without a miter saw, and that footage just got lost. I have no idea what happened to it. But at any rate, I'm going to mark my pieces, and I'm going to add about 1/8 to 1/4 inch to each measurement just to allow for the curve of the blade. And then, of course, once I have the measurements marked out, I'm going to draw a line on it just so I can line up my saw blade with it a little easier. Typically, I do this on the edge, but a lot of times I will mark the face and the edge as well. I will record another video on how I do this with the table saw instead of a miter saw, and just put it up for another time, just to be a real quick short video. Now, once I have everything marked, I'm going to come over and I'm going to cross cut. The basic gist of how I do this without a miter saw is I use this clamp to help hold down the board on the right hand side, because I don't have as much surface area on my crosscut sled on the right as I do on the left to be able to support the workpiece. And I'll make my first cut in about the middle of the board, right on the mark closest to the middle as I can. And when I pop the clamp loose, you can see how it pops down like that. That's what that clamp is for. That's to keep it from popping up on me while I'm making the cut. So now I'm going to get my fence in place, and I'm going to use the same trick as I used last week, where I'll mark the board and I'll use a scrap piece on my fence to get my pieces all lined up. And I do apologize for some of the sounds you're about to hear. Sometimes when I'm in a really good mood and I'm outside working, I start to sing along to my music, and I don't have the greatest singing voice, especially through a dust mask. But at any rate, what I'll do is I'll mark the board and I'll use a scrap piece on my fence. Now, these measurements do not have to be exact, but the only thing is all your similar pieces need to be the exact same size. That's the only trick. You don't have to have an exact measurement. I mean, you can be a 1/16 to 1/8 off, and your crate will still come out close to the same dimensions as what you're going for. As long as all your similar pieces are the exact same size, then everything will line up like it should. So I'm going to get my mark lined up with my blade, and then I'm going to get my scrap piece in place, and I'm going to start making my cuts. Naked light I saw, doesn't people live anymore? Okay, now comes the sawdust part, and trust me, you'll get that joke here in just a little bit. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start ripping my boards down. Now, the first step that I go through is not exactly necessary, but I'll explain what I'm doing. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the edge of my board, and I'm going to use that edge against my fence. The reason I do this, especially on these crates, is because construction lumber usually comes with those really rounded over edges, and I really don't like that much of a round over on those edges. I try to keep everything as clean lines as possible on these things. So I'll cut these off, and then I'll use that edge against the fence, and that'll give me some clean lines. Like I said, it's not necessary. It's just something I do to help clean things up a little bit. And I will go through and do it to all my boards before I start ripping everything down. Once I have all those done, next I will move my fence over and I will set it to 1/2 inch from the blade, because that's the size of strips that you want to make these crates with. And then I will just start ripping them down to 1/2 inch width. And I'd like to take a second and point out, I realize that I do not have my riving knife on. I used it earlier and I had to take it off because my push stick will not fit between my fence and the riving knife, so I had to remove it for this part. I typically do have it on there. And this is probably the most time-consuming part of this entire project. So now that I've worked the boards down a little bit, I'm going to show you what I do as the pieces start to get smaller and my hands will get closer to the blade. I will use my second push stick, the one that came with my saw, to help guide it through. I do not actually put any kind of pressure on it. It's just to help keep it from kicking back. And like I said, doing this is very time consuming. Just keep cutting, keep cutting, keep cutting. Now it's important to note that it's taken me a little bit longer than it would you guys, because I'm actually building 2 of these. If you're only building 1, it'll take half the time, obviously. But I am making 2 of these today, so that's why it's taking a little longer than normal. So once I have those cut, next I'm going to move my fence to 1 inch, and I'm going to rip the uprights for my crates. I'm going to set it to 1 inch and just start cutting away. So I'm going to rip 4 pieces from one of these 2x6 by 12 inch pieces. Now this step is completely unnecessary if you don't want to do it, but for me, I personally like having my upright corner pieces perfectly square, so I will rip them down again at 1 inch from the 1.5 inch side. Again, this is completely unnecessary. It's just something I do to make it a little extra, I guess. So I told you we were going to make some sawdust. It is, it's hard to get into, 3 inches underneath the table saw. Told you. Okay, so once you get done with all your cuts, this is what you should wind up with for one of these crates. And you got 22 1/2 inch by 14 inch pieces. You've got 12 1/2 inch by 20 inch pieces, and you've got 4 1 inch by 1 inch by 12 inch pieces. And these mats right here, these silicone mats, I picked up at Woodcraft, and they're great for protecting your bench from the glue and whatnot. And the nice thing about them is, move the camera over here so I can show you, is when the glue dries, You can just peel it right off. Isn't that awesome? So what we're going to do is I'm going to start by putting the 20-inch pieces together with the 1-inch by 1-inch by 12-inch pieces, and then we'll put the 14-inch pieces on. And I'm using, you guessed it, Titebond 3. And unfortunately, I'm having to use finish nails, 16 gauge finish nails on this, because I thought I had some 3/4 inch 18 gauge brad nails, but I don't. But I have some 1-inch 16 gauge finish nails, so that's what I'm going to be using on this. So the only other thing you might need is you're going to need a spacer. Now, on these I used a 1/2 inch spacer. On the previous ones I used a 5/8 inch spacer. You can use either one, but like I said before, basically what you're going to do is you're going to connect your 20-inch pieces to your corner pieces, and the way you're going to do that is, the way I do it is, you're going to glue it a little bit. Now the crucial part here is to make sure that these first two pieces are perfectly square to each other, and then just make sure the corners are all square, and then everything should go together just fine. So what I do is I put one nail in one side, and then I'll go over and square up the other side and put a nail through it, and then I'll go ahead and put my second nail in, and then I'll come back and put my second nail in on the other side, on the first side, and I'll repeat this for both the top and the bottom on this one side. Okay, so now you need to put your pieces in the middle, and this is where your spacer comes in. You'll put your spacer in place, then you'll put your glue on like you did the first two pieces, and just make sure everything's pressed up against the spacer. This is why it's so crucial to get those first two pieces perfectly square to the corners. Now you need to keep in mind that you want to alternate between the top and the bottom. That way any extra space or space discrepancies that you have on it will come out in the middle, and everything will look uniform all the way around. As you can see here, I have a little bit bigger gap in the middle, and that's by design. You can adjust your spacer to where this comes out more even if you'd like. So now, of course, you want to do a little bit of sanding to get rid of some of the sharp corners and whatnot, and this is the ideal time to do this. You can either do it before you start putting the whole thing together, or at this point before you put the rest of it together. Of course, you can do it after you get the whole thing together if you'd like. It just might take you a little longer. Okay, now once I have that done, I'm going to start working on the ends, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the pieces lined up and get one nail in each corner, and then square it up from there. So now once I have one nail in each corner, I'm going to take my square and I'm going to get it all squared up, and I'm going to put the second nail in. And I'm going to repeat this for the four corners, and then I will turn it around and do the other side. Now once I have both sides done, then I'm going to repeat with the spacer and put the pieces on the exact same way I did on the first two long sides. Working with these short sides is a little easier because when you have everything lined up, so you pretty much know where everything's going to go, so it goes a little quicker. Okay, now that you have your two short sides done, you can now start putting on your bottom and using glue and nails again and your spacer. Now, one thing you need to be careful of while doing this is you need to make sure you have, especially if you're going to use a nail gun of any kind, you want to make sure that you have it lined up just right, because you've only got a ½ inch space there to get it straight into your cross piece. Otherwise, you're going to wind up having a blowout, and nobody wants that. So I was getting ready to start putting the second crate together, and my wife comes up and says, "You know what would be cool?" Yeah. She wanted me to try and put handles on it, so I just freeform drew a little thing in the dead center of the top two pieces for the short sides and cut it out on the bandsaw. I just cut it out on the bandsaw, getting as close to the line as possible without going over. That's the beauty of these 2x6 crates, is you can customize them almost any way you can imagine. And then once I had them cut out, I just took it over to my oscillating spindle sander, which, by the way, my wife, Kat, calls it the up and down sander thingy. But anyway, I took it over to the spindle sander and just got it all sanded down to the line. So I don't know if you guys remember last week, the week before last, I said something about everybody makes mistakes, and sometimes when you make a mistake and you figure out how to fix it, you make it better. This is one of those cases, in my opinion. When I've built these that I've already done the aging process to, I used a 5/8 inch spacer, and I forgot that. I thought I used a ½ inch spacer, and it left this small little gap right here between these two pieces in the middle of the bottom. So when I got to the middle on these today, there was too big of a gap, so I had to put another piece in there, and there's almost ½ inch between these two, not quite, but it put another piece in there and actually makes the bottom look a little bit better to me, a little more solid. Okay, so there you have it, and this is the modification that Kat wanted me to make, and I'm gonna start calling her Kat instead of my wife. I'm pretty sure you guys know by now that Kat is my wife. Anyway, so I'm gonna start. So yeah, this is the modification that she wanted me to make, and I think it looks okay. So yeah, there's those two, and okay, so that's it. It's that simple. I mean, it really is just really simple. I mean, it's a little time consuming, especially cutting all the parts, and yes, I know I have hat hair. I don't really care. But yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, there's really nothing to it. As you do a few of these, you actually get quicker at it, and you figure out ways to make it quicker, and it goes by really, really fast. It took me all day simply because I was being lazy and just taking my time doing it, because I don't really have anything else to do today. And I had to move the camera around and stuff like that, so I was just taking my time. Anyway, I know I went over the cut list earlier, and if I do the edit right, it's actually listed up there so you can get a screenshot of it. If I do forget that, then hopefully I'll remember at this part when I'm editing and put it in there. So anyway, but I'm going to go over one more time what you need. One 2x6x8, and that costs about $5, maybe $6 at Home Depot, depending on where you live. And from that, you can make one of these crates. But what you need to cut out of that is you need two 20-inch long pieces, three 14-inch long pieces, and one 12-inch long piece. And then from the 20-inch and the 14-inch pieces, you're going to rip half-inch strips off of it. And you need 23, not 22 like I said before, but 23 14-inch strips, and you need 12 20-inch strips. And then the 12-inch piece that you cut, you're going to cut 4 1-inch by 1-inch pieces, and that'll be your corners. And then it's just a matter of glue and nails or screws or whatever you decide to use to put it together. I mean, you can use dowels on it if you want to. Might take a little longer, but make it nice, fancy. Sell it for a little bit higher price. Who knows? But yeah, that's it. I mean, that's really it. I mean, these things are so simple to make, it's not even funny. So the next video should be me. I'm going to build shelves for the closet in my wife's craft room. And you'll see what I'm talking about in that video, because I'm going to take a video of the whole thing and try to explain to you a little bit about what all we're going to be doing in there. And after that, hopefully we'll start getting into some really fun stuff. I'm going to build drawers for my table down here, like I said last week. And I am planning on, with any luck, I have a customer that may or may not want me to do this, but I have actually designed a 28 bottle countertop wine rack. Their specifications were a wine rack that fits on the counter that holds 25 to 30 bottles. I came up with a 28 bottle one. And if they want it, and as soon as they are settled on what we're doing with it, then I'll be starting that one. And that one will that one will definitely be made out of hardwood. So you'll actually get me to see me use hardwood. I can't believe I've gone this long without using any hardwood. But yeah, so if you haven't already, if you want to catch all that, click on the subscribe button down below and make sure you hit that little bell so you get notified when I put those videos up. And like I said last week, if there's anything that you guys would like to see me try and do, please don't hesitate. Don't be shy. Put it down in the comments and I will get to it. If I can't figure it out, I have some really good friends here in Colorado that can help me figure it out. Hint, hint, James. Anyway, I hope y'all have a good day. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like, hit the thumbs up button, and I'll see you next week. Until next time, happy creating. Bye, honey.